And good morning, class. So for today, it's we'll start with topic two, maintaining variation. So I think we did start with this topic before the cancellation of classes, but we'll just go through the first part for now. So examples of variation, you see, different colors, um, different structures, right, for different animals. Okay, types of traits. So we have heritable traits. This will be transmitted from generation to generation, meaning your parents' DNA will be encoded and will be passed on to you. So you have two types of heritable traits, and you probably know this already. You have discrete, which is either or, so like blue colored eyes or green or brown or light brown, those things. Um, and then continuous variation will have like a huge range, like height, foot size, wingspan, those things. Okay, for the YouTube videos, maybe you can just look it up. So you see here some examples of different eye color. Uh, so that's an example of discrete variation, and this will be an example. The next picture will be an example of continuous variation. Okay, inherited traits are traits that are passed on from your parents to you, um, through your genes, like their genes. So this transmission of parental traits to their offspring always follows certain principles or laws. I don't know if you still remember the Punnett square, but we will still be discussing that anyway. Um, when I'm drawing those squares with symbols and stuff, that will be the Punnett square. The study of how inherited traits are passed on is called genetics. Non-inheritable traits will be caused by environment. It's not encoded in your DNA. Examples would be tanned skin, colored hair, scars. Obviously, tattoo will not be included there, or ability to speak Japanese or Chinese or Portuguese if you're not a native speaker of those languages. Um, and I will now go to reproduction. Um, okay, so for evolutionists, the main purpose of our existence is to reproduce, basically, right? So the process by which new organisms are generated. But of course, being Christians, we don't believe that that's our only purpose, right? Because we know that God has set a purpose for us. So the importance of reproduction is to ensure survival and continuation of the species. Because you want to make sure that your offspring will produce more offsprings and so on. So here are some examples. Another example here. So method of reproduction determines amount of variation. Um, Offspring can be identical to the parent, like these plants here, the flowers here, or like this baby boy here, who looks a little different, compared to to his parents. So you have two types of reproduction. You have asexual and sexual. Asexual, from the word itself, like if you see the letter A, it means not or un. So this is not sexual reproduction. So it only involves, since there's no sex here, you only need one parent to do that. Offsprings are genetically identical to the parent. So yeah, so that's pretty self-explanatory. Adults makes an exact copy of itself. We have four ways of asexual reproduction. We'll skip this part because you don't do this. Okay, well, the first one is binary fission. So this is how bacteria reproduce. So one cell parent makes an exact copy of its DNA, and then somehow manages to separate into two different cells, and so on. Those cells will now create new daughter cells, exact same copy of the parent. So occurs in single-celled organisms. See the picture here. So this is the picture of an organism um, recreating itself. So like a bacteria, amoeba, algae, and yeah, if you just want to type the code here, you can watch the YouTube videos. Okay, so this is the process. Starts from here, and then you will notice there's a cleavage here, meaning they're starting to separate. This is where the DNA is replicated. Now they start to separate. Now they have, and then Step 6, you have two identical individuals from a single organism. Okay, how many offspring can a binary fission produce? Well, you've done this for your math 9 class. So just let's look at this one for example. As you step off the bus at 8 a.m., a single bacterium drifts into your mouth. Under ideal conditions, it can reproduce in 20 minutes. So basically, after 20 minutes, your one bacteria will become two. So when you're sitting in class at 8:20, there are two, and then by 8:40, there are four. Now the question is, how many bacteria will there be by 3 p.m.? Well, you just need to check how many times do I need to multiply it by 2, depending on how many 20 minutes will there be till 3 p.m. So exponents, the base 2, meaning they split in 2, and then exponents represent number of divisions. So like in this case, so there are 21 20 minutes between those times, and that's why it's 2 raised to 21, because they split in 2. Now if the bacteria can split into 3, then this will be 3 raised to 21, but in this case, because it splits into 2, you only put 2 here raised to 21. Now so imagine by 3 p.m. you have 2,097,152 bacteria present in your mouth. Do you think bacteria can keep multiplying in this way forever? Why or why not? Right? Okay, next one is, so think about it. Pause the video, think about it. Google it, reflect on it, and maybe, eventually in the future, I'll be setting up discussion boards for us to have a discussion with. Okay, next one is budding. So you will notice here the picture, there is a daughter organism attached to the parent, like this hydra here, and then eventually it will fall off and start to reproduce again. So new individual develops from an outgrowth of the parent, but eventually detaches and becomes a new individual identical to the parent. So like an example would be the yeast, like this one, hydra or coral. So a trivia for you: a coral as big as your head will require 20 years to grow that big. And the next one, so that's budding. Now next one is spores, single-celled reproductive structures produced by division of cells. And you know what? I don't know if you know this, but spores are everywhere. They are just waiting for an area where they can land and grow. Okay, produced by divisions of cells. One individual will produce millions of spores, millions, because they need to spread out. The chances of them, landing on an ideal environment or condition will be very slim, and that's the reason why they're producing a lot of spores. Each spore can develop into a new individual. Many are produced so that some will survive. I don't know if you still remember that video wherein, like a Bill Nye video, wherein this guy sprayed a piece of bread with water, let it sit on the counter for a while, and then put it in a bag, and then days after you've seen molds, right? So which means that those molds can be present in the house already, and then landed on the bread. In mushroom, spores are produced in the gills underneath the cap here. Okay, 13,000 spores are produced on one side of the gill. So each gill has two sides. So the gill is here. So count the number of gills there. How many spores can one mushroom produce? Okay, you can look it up. Search it up. Zoospores produced by some fungi and algae. Spores that have a flagella. So flagella will be this one, this part here, tail-like structure. So zoospores. And then the last one, vegetative reproduction, cutting small part of a mature plant is cut off and replanted. So roses can be planted this way, vines can be planted this way, strawberries, spider plants will develop into an identical plant. So that's the best way, and it's the fastest way to do this. Now you can type this URL, and and then look for videos related to vegetative reproduction. So advantages of asexual: you don't need to find a mate. So you don't need to find a partner in order for you to reproduce. You can just do it if the condition is right for you. Then you can just reproduce to ensure that your offspring will continue to survive. Like no specialized cells needed now. Specialized meaning egg cells, sperm cells, those things. Those are gametes. In general, they are classified as gametes. No special structures needed, no sexual organs, no nothing to bring gametes together. And can produce a lot of, another advantage is you can produce a lot very quickly. So large populations, because since time will not be a problem, because you don't need to look for, so you're not wasting time. Since you don't need to look for a mate, then you don't need those complicated structures in order to produce offspring. So you'll be able to produce large populations. Have a great advantage in environments that don't change. Okay, so that's a key point. Don't change. Okay, and we will learn the disadvantages shortly after. So any environmental, that's a problem. So any change in the environment can actually wipe out the whole population, and that's a problem with asexual reproduction. Since they all have the same DNA, they are susceptible to the same disease. They can only survive at a certain condition, so that's why it's very difficult for them to survive if there will be a change in the environment. Okay, so no individuals with variation to ensure adaptation and survival. And yeah, and then we'll start with sexual reproduction next time.